All right, so I want to say thank you for giving me your time today, man. I know you're very
Uh,
busy with everything,
no
and
problem.
me and you have been in communication and buddies since 2012. So
Oh
over
yeah,
10 years.
that's when it was, eh? Is that when I
Yeah,
sent the puppet down?
that was
No, you were.
20,
That was earlier.
2014. 2014 was when you did that,
Oh, okay.
and he's doing good. He's doing good. So,
Good.
but the I just wanted to do this. A lot of people that inspired me to make my own movies and stuff. I really just wanted to get a real good piece on your life story and career,
Cool.
just for research purposes and history. Um, I personally know a lot more than I'm going to ask, but for anybody that watches this, this is really for them, really.
Great.
Um, so, how did it start? How did you get into entertainment to begin with, before puppetry and so forth, like that?
I guess I wanted to be a kid. I was a kid actor. I wanted to be an actor when I was a kid, and I think that was probably my beginning. I got into some school plays, and I was a I actually, oh, no, it was visual arts. That's why I got into the art school originally. I was just going to regular schools, but I was a good drawer, and I auditioned to get into an art school in grade 6. So I got in originally for visual art, just drawing and that kind of thing. And then it was kind of like you do dance, mime, theater, and I got into theater while I was there. And I guess what I became is a puppeteer, a mix of art and theater came together.
Okay.
But yeah, I just kind of always wanted to be in entertainment, and as a kid, I was always putting on plays and creating adventures for my friends. So I just kind of like the idea of doing that as you know on the big screen.
Now, how would you describe where you grew up at? Was it towards Toronto, or was it more like a
Yeah,
country?
no, I was a grew up in North York, which is kind of just a northern suburb of Toronto,
Okay.
and I was a cottage kid. We went up to a cottage that my parents rented with some friends and skied and windsurfed and that kind of thing. So I was kind of a nature and city.
So how would you say that if that growing environment affected your artistry from
Hmm.
that point?
I think I was pretty lucky to just have really supportive family. They just never said no. They were like, if you want to do that, you can do that. They weren't, you should be an accountant or anything like that. But life was an inspiration, but it was also the timing of my life. Like definitely what I do right now, puppets, was inspired by being born in 1971 and Jim Henson and the Muppet Show and Star Wars and Gremlins and Sesame Street. That was all really at its heyday in those early 80s. It's kind of that time. So it really was such a heyday, especially like all the practical effects got really good. Like we went from Harryhausen and his stop motion kind of like, um, what was that movie he did? Anyway, Ray Harryhausen was an original stop motion guy. But then once we got into kind of like the Star Wars era, and then effects and creatures and all those things, really kind of the practical effects were really hopping at that time. They were really amazing.
Now,
So me being want to be a part of that, I guess.
now how did that, because I remember a couple interviews you did where you spoke about how you created your own Halloween costumes. Now,
Yep.
was that before, or was that during this same time period
No,
for
I
you?
was always pretty Halloween crazy. That's true. I loved making costumes. So that wasn't early. That was before I even knew what I wanted to do. I
Okay.
just loved setting up. Yeah, I'd start getting ready for Halloween a couple months before, and the more I got into it, the more I learned about latex rubber and making creature masks and special effects kind of techniques and sewing. And so yeah, I guess I made costumes first, and then I tried to start making some creatures. I wanted to make my own gremlin at some point, or ET, and then yeah, then I just kind of then at when I in grade 6, I really got into theater and performing and then being an actor.
Now, when you did the Gremlin or the ET, did you go full animatronic with it, or was it just a
Oh
sculpture?
no, I was just a kid. I went full cut up the mattress and paint it.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Awesome.
like just trimming foam rubber and trying to make it something I can put my hand in to make a creature. But I didn't know what I had. You know, those first creatures, I think I just made them out of foam rubber. Then I found liquid latex. I don't know. Do you know what that is? Like, yeah, you do.
I do
Yeah,
now. I
liquid
do now.
rubber. You paint it and it dries, and you can paint it in layers. And I was quite experimental with all the kind of like organic things I could make out of that, and masks and stuff. I remember making a Halloween mask with this eye hanging down, and I'd set up this kind of gross table, and I was just this creature sitting at the table, and kids would not even come collect candy.
Really?
And I was like, yes.
So how did that? So that made you feel like, man, did that. How did the confidence boost you with that? Did that make you feel like I know what I'm doing?
I don't know. I don't know if scaring children was my real, watershed moment, but
Yeah.
I just always did it. Like I have the very first video cameras. I tried to do animation on the very first video cameras with my action figures. So there's these old VHS tapes where these action figures are kind of going, because all I could do is go play, stop. So nothing was short enough to do real animation. So things would kind of move at this, every 1 second they'd make one motion.
Okay. Did you? So I don't know if I saw this on your Facebook once upon a time, or if you said it somewhere else. But how did your mom and your dad inspire you with going on your own ideas? And I'm sure because when you made your first thing, you had to show somebody, hey, look what I made, look what I did.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was lucky enough to have good supportive parents. I guess that's all it was. They were both business people. My dad worked for IBM, and my mom worked for I don't know, some fashion company. Oh yeah, and then she worked for Bell. Yeah, so they just had corporate jobs, but they were just good parents. I had a good imagination, I guess. I just loved kind of like creatures and monsters. It's not too irregular to love those things.
Okay.
My mom died when I was 13, so I probably had a stronger desire to escape to fantasy after that, for obvious reasons. So I think that's a big part of probably my pedigree, is just kind of like the escapism element. If you want to get real psychological about it.
I honestly did not know that one. I thought I know she wasn't around anymore, but I didn't know it was that early in your life. I really didn't know that one.
Yeah, it was pretty big time to have her pass, and I feel it really kind of like set me up as like having a large imagination, because it was just such a painful time, and there wasn't very many tools to deal with things properly. So you just kind of like create your own worlds and go there.
Okay. so you go from creating these Halloween costumes, and then you grow up, and then you get into this circle of, you go to school and you're around other people that are like-minded, that you organically meet, that are like the same things that you do. Where do you go from there to I read you did one birthday party with puppets or something, and that was it. And that was
I mean, I was a theater major and a kid actor. I got an agent and everything. But I did find the audition process kind of torturous, and the whole kind of like letting other people choose if you are good enough to do the job was not really working for me. So that's when I went to travel Europe after high school, just at 20 years old, and Jim Henson died while I was in Europe. When was that? Like 1990 or 89 or 90. And for me, it was just so easy, and I just like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a troupe of puppets and follow in his footsteps of making kind of like fantasy movies and that kind of thing. I haven't made any fantasy movies, but I've made a ton of fantasy television. So that's that's kind of like and that is my next phase. I kind of am now breaking into that and finishing some films up right now. But yeah, just kind of like right after, and then I just came back from Europe from this 1 year find myself trip, and I started sewing puppets. I had no doubt that's what I wanted to do. So I made this giant puppet called Cupcake. I'm sure you can find it online, a big yellow monster. I made this bunny named Jasper, and I made this weird looking mermaid. Gideon Rosencrantz made it a latex. Yeah, I just started making a troupe of puppets.
I'm glad you brought up. I don't know if it's the same rabbit or not. And I don't know if this is true. It's very good that you brought this up. I read a long time ago, probably 10 years ago now, that someone put an article out there that your place was robbed and a lot of those puppets were stolen. Is that true, or is that just me?
Well, that's a no, I have been robbed, but I got mostly lost hard drives and stuff. But there was a flood in the basement of one of my partners, so a lot of the Mr. Meaty puppets apparently got ruined then, sadly.
You've created Nanalan and Mr. Meaty. You've done some side things like, Swami Jeff and Apollo's Pad, little involvement in that.
Yeah.
Big and Small.
Big and Small.
Recently as Rasputin, the short film that you did.
Yep.
I believe with Heather Henson, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I worked with Heather Henson for the Rasputin short film. Yep.
So how do you, something that always interested me was, you met Mr. Hopley, I believe, through school.
Yep.
How do you meet, Marty Stelnick, Ali Eisner, Todd Dolderson? How do you create this crew? Because you
were well done. You've done your research.
How do you work with people through all these shows together?
I think it just I think that kind of happens naturally. If you have like interests and you're kind of someone who does like to work with other people, they'll just appear. I think, if you're making puppet shows, the puppeteers will just magically appear. I just think that. Or if you start a company and you want to make shoes and you need a marketing person, if you just, that's serendipity. I think that's the power of serendipity and just people hearing what you're doing and your intention to do it. It all just kind of works. I think it all kind of works together. That stuff comes together with intention. I'm going to do this, and then the things that make that possible to do will appear.
Now, how in real life, how does, like, I'm now starting to create my own films, and it literally exactly happened how you said it. It just happened. I met all these people organically. Some I grew up with, and you kind of just invite them, like-minded people, to come in to create something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the magic of it. And I feel like that's a lot of what your stuff did for me growing up, and as well as puppetry in general, because the life is in the arm, and in the design of the figure that you're presenting.
Yeah.
When you're creating like a show like Nanalan, which is, I would say, it's for everybody, but it's more towards aimed for preschool or younger. How do you say, all right, guys, we just came up with this smaller concept. How do we go from that to Mr. Meaty? Because it's a complete flip. It's a complete flip.
It is. That is a complete flip. I think that was just the timing of the actual event. We had made Nanalan, and then an executive from Nickelodeon was up at the Ottawa Animation Festival, and one morning he was having coffee and he saw Nanalan on TV, and he was like, "What's this?" And then he got in touch and he asked if we had any ideas for a teenage show. And we had actually CBC, somebody who loved Nanalan, brought us in to make a bunch of shorts with Mr. Meaty. He said, "Do you have anything you could do for our after school zone? We need to kind of like, we need something that's kind of more pushes the envelope and that kind of thing." And that's when we came up with Mr. Meaty and made a bunch of shorts. And then when that Nickelodeon guy saw Nanalan, he was very impressed with our talent. And we showed him the shorts, and it was bing bang boom. They ordered the series right away.
So you started working at YTV as an intern, correct?
No, I started working at YTV for free. I just went on my friend was a program jockey, a PJ.
Okay.
Rob Stefaniak, and he was, just basically one of the teenagers on playing guitar between shows. And he brought me on for free. I was like, I'll come in for free. I actually skipped school and just went in to do those free live between shows. And then after about 3 months, they hired. They said, "We're going to hire you full time."
Now, for you to get hired at that point, are you, I don't want to say for lack of a better term, being an overachiever, but are you putting in 10,000, 20,000 hours for them to notice you, to give you that opportunity to do that, to take that position?
No, that was very lucky. I mean, I had the hours of performing with my friend live, and but that was a learn on the job type of thing. I think what impressed them is how much work went into creating a puppet troupe.
Okay.
I sewed all the puppets first. I kind of created my little puppet troupe. I made up the name, the Grogs, when I was traveling Europe. Then I came back and I met Jason Hopley, and then we both started making puppets. And then, we had an impressive troupe of puppets. So YTV was like, we're going to make you our characters.
Okay. Now, when you're sitting down and you're, I found you through Mr. Meaty. So
yep.
I love Nanalan. I respect it. I respect your other stuff that you've done, but Mr. Meaty will be like the all-time thing for me with you, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
Fair
growing up, it was like, I remember I had DirecTV. I don't know if Canada had that.
No.
But DirecTV had all the Nick channels and all the variations of it. So Teen Nick, the Nick Jr., all the others, Nicktoons.
Yeah.
And so when Mr. Meaty, here in the US, when Mr. Meaty started playing, it was on Nick. And then season 2 was on Nicktoons. So if you didn't have DirecTV, you never seen it. Or cable, or
that's too bad. I did hear that, because season 2 had so many good gems. We really got our stride in season 2.
So that leads to my question of, what is the reality of it? Because when you read the story of Mr. Meaty on Wikipedia, it's sentence after sentence, very generalized, no detail.
Yeah.
You make this show that, wasn't supposed to be shown. It was supposed to be for tweens, early teens, and it wasn't show. It was the complete opposite. So you create this show that's fun and has its own energy in the first season, and then you guys had to make the second season more lesson based. How does that call work? Who tells who? All right, fellas, we have to change the direction a little bit here.
Oh, really? I've never noticed that. Is that true? Like in the second season, it's got less morals? Is that what you're saying?
It has more.
More morals?
Yes.
Oh.
So you have puberty, you have embarrassment, you have being responsible.
That's
the first
true.
season
That's
was
interesting.
The first season was, they call it gross.
I generally don't agree with the idea of putting too many morals in things, because I find it kind of like is patronizing to the audience. So that's interesting that was there. I don't remember that choice. I don't remember why that would have happened. I don't think that was a conscious choice. We did have 2 extra writers that came in for the second season. I wonder if that was just their writerly influence, kind of giving it more kind of like a little bit of a lesson or something. I'm not sure. It's interesting.
Because, you had the, I think it was the Puberty Fairy episode, which you directed, I think.
Yep.
And the end of the episode was, Parker had the ticket and he wanted to go see the movie, but the guy you were voicing him, the other character getting beat up by the dumpster, by the Star Raiders guys.
Yeah.
And Parker gives him his ticket.
Charming.
So it's that, like you said, charming. It's like that lesson based. Let me help you instead of helping me.
That seems like it's the influence of writers, because that's good storytelling. Just kind of like, he matured. I'm not a kid anymore. I can give a younger guy my ticket to the movie.
Yes.
It's an act of selflessness. That sounds like a classic maturation story. So they were just probably giving us more expertise, where in the first season, I think it was just Jason and I writing them, maybe. And then they were just kind of like more abstract, and, as if mine weren't abstract already. We just had total freedom and lack of experience or direction.
I want to create an episode of a demon coming from protein powder. I want to create a Yeti. I want to create a girl that takes her face off, and she's an alien. Obviously, you have influences from The Thing, Alien, Lucas and Romero, all these great people and all their works and things like that. But how do you start from zero to say this demon's going to come out of protein powder? Where does it start? I always want to know.
Ideas are a funny thing. They're just kind of like, I think everybody has them. You just got to feel proud enough of yourself to write them down and think they're special. I think it's something to do with that. I think everybody must get silly ideas all the time. And people like me, we just kind of like, ooh, demon protein powder, genius. I'm going to write that down. I don't know. It's just whatever. You have to have the confidence to think that absurd idea has value. I think that's, for me, I think that's what it is. But those ideas, yeah. I mean, that whole show, Mr. Meaty, is kind of like ties back to the same question as like, why did I get into it in the early 80s? I think Mr. Meaty was kind of a celebration of all the things that inspired both of us. Planet of the Apes. Jason made a Planet of the Apes. I made a Yeti. I always loved that creature from Star Wars, that Yeti creature at the beginning of, no, it was in Empire Strikes Back. And then, just kind of, that was like we just had this amazing budget. We got to make our dreams come true. So it was kind of a way to make little 11-minute versions of the silly movies we loved.
Now, all right, fellas, tomorrow we're filming Buffalo Burrito or Meaty. What is the teamwork first thing in the morning? What is the...
Oh God, it's a team of 50 people. So I would have no bearing on that decision. That would be line producers and budgeteers and all the people kind of like putting the production together, because it's a huge team to make a production happen. You're probably doing it with a small team and you're discovering how much work it is. And just imagine if you had double the team, how much easier it would be. And then, so yeah, I think we did 3 days per episode and we just scheduled them in and, hustled through getting the production done. These are good questions. You're a pretty good interviewer. Do you have all these written down, or are you just making them up?
These are probably some stuff I've been waiting over 10 years to ask you. So,
okay, all right.
So I don't want to ask you like super minuscule stuff. I kind of just want to ask you the big general stuff.
They're good questions.
When you create the script of an episode, I remember when you were talking about these shorts of Nanalan before it became the full series, it was more like you said, I don't want her to actually say real words. I want it to be like mishmash of sounds.
Yeah.
And then when it got picked up to be the full series, they came and said to you, she has to say real words.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember hearing you weren't really a fan of that, but you still went with it and made it work to you.
Yeah.
When you come from that to Mr. Meaty, working with a big production like Nickelodeon, do you have to get approval for the idea before you do it?
Yeah, we totally do. But they gave us a lot of freedom with that Mr. Meaty, which is kind of why maybe it was a bit too scary for people. They're like, the attitude that it's puppets. You can do anything with puppets. So we went all out with Mr. Meaty. They had a very different CBC, like where we made Nanalan in Canada. It's our national broadcast. It's like your PBS. So there's a lot more kind of like restraint and care, and it's got to be educational and just kind of like looking out for the kids. So I think that's just basically a different place to make something. Nickelodeon is a commercial thing. They just want the eyeballs of the kids watching. So they wanted something, we were trying to do a Ren and Stimpy, kind of like push the envelope. And so very, very different space.
Now, what obviously some of the puppets still exist. I know this, you know this. What else besides some of the do some of the set pieces still exist? How does a production like this work when it's done?
Yeah, the puppets were all kept in the basement that later got wrecked. But the sets, they were probably kept somewhere. They were probably kept in storage, and then until we knew the production wasn't going to get picked up again or something, and then they probably got discarded.
So what is your overall feelings of Mr. Meaty as as it is 2 seasons and all the shorts. What did you like about? What are your favorite things about it? And is there anything you wish you could have did better? It was a very long time ago now.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I love a lot of things about it. I think it veered a little too close on Uncanny Valley. I don't know if I think I kind of I wanted to make them more kind of like primary colors, like Nanalan. I wanted to make them a little more abstract. I feel like part of the creepiness of it was its Uncanny Valley-ness, and I think we probably would have had more fans of it if it was a little more accessible and less creepy Uncanny Valley.
Now, when you say,
do you know what that is, Uncanny Valley?
When you say Uncanny Valley, do you mean like Mr. Potato Head?
Mr. Uncanny Valley is kind of like when things are just too close to human. When a false thing is too close to human, it kind of gives you the willies. It's like if you look at one of those robots that looks human, it gives you the willies.
Yes.
Or often in kid shows, actually, I find that they try to they make them look too human. The hands and the eyes, and it just the geometry of the thing is just sort of like, once thing you need to make things, and that's what Jim Henson was so smart about, is he made things very abstract. It's just 2 eyes, colorful face. It's an abstract thing that expresses a personality rather than a realistic person. And then I just think that Mr. Meaty sometimes looks they're just a little too fleshy.
The one thing I will say, the positive thing about what you just said was, and I told you this many years ago, was when I was a kid, it was off to me because I remember feeling it, but I wasn't pushed away from it.
Yeah, you weren't pushed away.
The Mupp Kermit is like this. Sometimes he'll do this.
Yeah.
But Mr. Meaty was like the vowels in the words. You could feel it. You could see it through your fingers when you're doing the puppet.
Yeah, that's true, eh?
And the chewing, some of the characters were eating stuff. And that's how I always thought Mr. Meaty was cool, because it was obviously they're puppets and they're not real people. So as you're a kid, it's not real, but it feels real.
Yeah.
Right. So I will say that, and I haven't seen that done to this day, and even though that little aspect might fall under the Uncanny Valley category, that I think is what set it apart from the rest. And I think that's why stuff like that is why Mr. Meaty is still Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, it's still blowing up.
It's still out there. It's true. It's kind of like it's in the ether. I'll never stop doing that. I'll never stop making puppets that can enunciate words. I love it. Yeah, there's that kind of clappy mouth Muppet that's just like a hard mouth. And there's something to that. Like it kind of has it's easy to look at in a way, and it kind of looks silly to look at, and it's funny. But I like the more kind of like realism of something you can really get your fingers into.
I don't like people telling me no. I have to admit, I don't. And I always take that no and try to make it happen in another way.
Good job.
And as an artist,
that's why you're making films.
Thank you, man.
You can only do that with great persistence.
And the thing about it is, that leads to my question of, all right, Jamie, all right, Jason, Mr. Meaty is canceled. How do you feel? Like, you're sitting there like, we put our heart and soul into this. We're creators. We can come up with something else. But really, guys, it's like that. I know it's business, but
I know.
As an artist, how do you take that? Because this has happened to you a couple times.
I mean, that is the world of that's the world of all things. I mean, you gotta take the punches. Relationships end, and business opportunities end, and things you think were going to be successful aren't. And as they say, you just got to get back up on the horse. Successful people aren't talented or necessarily or brilliant or well funded. They're persistent. They get knocked off the horse and they get back on, because life it's a tough one. The chaos, the general, what is that? The third law of thermodynamics. Everything falls apart and will always kind of fall apart. So you got to fight that eternal force of everything falling apart. especially to make something gigantic with many people involved, and all the steps involved with a television series. But it is disappointing. I wish they'd give things longer chances. I think Mr. Meaty would have. I think it really kind of did. I think it did do well in the first season, and then they made that choice for some other reason. I think it was doing well, and then they moved it to Nicktoons. I think maybe they were dealing with a lot of complaints. It was kind of early internet, like 2007, and it was hilarious. All the petitions and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know if you've ever checked, but the forums are still online.
They are, right? Stop Mr. Meaty.
Yeah.
Vegetarians. It's funny. I was a vegetarian even when I made Mr. Meaty, I think. And, was more making fun of meat eating than making fun of vegetarians, if you ask me.
Yeah. I feel like nowadays everything is more accepted because it's not, you can watch whatever you want, wherever, whenever. And back then it was like, if you didn't catch it on TV, or like when I had direct TV, you could record it and save it.
I see.
So that was, I feel like, I don't want to say forced, but it was like the cafeteria food, what you were given to eat. That's what you ate if you didn't eat,
Yeah.
So it's like people that didn't like it probably had to sit through it to wait for SpongeBob or My Life as a Teenage Robot or whatever. So I feel like it was harder maybe for people that didn't like it to deal with back then. But I even at that, I feel like somewhere inside they have respect for it. Like even it might freak them out. They're like, they can still respect. Okay, this doesn't look like SpongeBob. This doesn't look like, But
I mean, there's a sort of love-hate. It's funny. I always accepted it as love-hate. It's kind of like people love-hate is how everything gets popular nowadays. But yeah, that was like a early love-hate, and I was like, and it's funny how many videos there are talking about the scariest show I saw as a kid.
Yeah.
That's really that's what all anybody does. Everybody, like if you go on YouTube, every YouTuber has got to take their shot at talking about being disturbed by Mr. Meaty.
Maybe I'm like a weird dude or there's something wrong with me, but the tapeworm thing didn't freak me out. Like it didn't, like I thought it was just, it's the puppets, Yeah,
they're puppets. And I just remember talking about tapeworms being, maybe we used to always talk about tapeworms. I remember as a kid, it was just a fascination. We were fascinated by tapeworms.
That kind of like reminds me of the like old, I think they're called old wives' tales or something, but it was like if you eat a pumpkin seed or a watermelon, one's going to grow in your stomach and you're going to die. Like it's kind of like that to me. Like I was always told that when I was a kid,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the mythology. So
I do want to touch base on two side projects as well, because there's nothing on the internet vocally about them. And respectfully, I only want you to say what you think is cool to say about them, because there's not much to talk about, honestly. You did the Swami Jeff shorts on. I seen some of them on your YouTube growing up. Yeah, and you said there was a pilot, but they look very similar to your style, the Grogs, Mr. Meaty.
Yeah, true.
Where did that idea come from, and why didn't that go anywhere?
I don't know why it didn't go anywhere. It's too bad. It was very funny. I don't know. I think, the pilot I rewatched too, Swami Jeff pilot. Do I have it on my... Oh, somebody's got a whole Swami Jeff website with 220 subscribers. Sorry, I'm just looking at it right now, trying to see if I can find it. It's hilarious. The pilot is very funny. Okay. I don't know. It's funny that these things don't... Who knows why? But that was based on my own... that was based on me and my own yoga, love of yoga and desire to teach people how to be calm like me. Sorry if I get away there. I was just trying to find it. I might have.
When you create a pilot, what is that, a pitch to somebody?
When you paid a pilot, yeah, that's basically. I think we got a little bit of money from Looney Tune Box. We got some money from somebody and we made the pilot. So they just gave us a few $1,000s to make the pilot to try and get a series going. It's too bad. I think it was pretty funny. It was a funny show, man.
So physically, you guys create this tape of a pilot, and what, it gets shown to a board of executives? Is that how it works?
Yep, I guess so. I don't know. Those are the parts I don't get to see. But things are kind of changing. You know, they're still pitching shows and getting them to happen, but less and less. This industry is changing hugely, such that creators are now in control. You know, they use the other people that are just kind of like laymen. You can just put it up on YouTube. So it's I think the way YouTube is taking away audience from all the classic networks is huge.
You don't need the approval.
Network. You had Cartoon Network. That was a huge channel that just got bought up by Warner Brothers, and just people aren't there. They're not watching Nickelodeon as much anymore, and they're not watching these television channels. They're watching their Nickelodeon.
So moving on, where did Apollo's Pad come from?
It was a music company, and they had a bunch of artists that they represented, but they wanted to create a sort of like some sort of online short. Basically, they were trying to create something that would get popular. So what it did is it represented all the different types of music. That's what Apollo's Pad was. So
I do have to say that I don't like, me personally, I don't like maturity in puppets. I thought that always, to me, there was it's hard work to do these things. The Happy Time Murderer, I think it was called.
Yeah.
When you get to mature stuff with puppets, it disengages me as well.
Me too. It doesn't quite work. It's not the I've never been a key, Avenue Q. You know, there's a place for it, but then it's already over. Like what the Wonder Shows and did it as well, or there was all these various kind of make fun of puppets by doing adult things with them, and now I think it doesn't even work because everybody's like, there already is that genre. When it was funny because it was shocking because you think of puppets for kids, but once you don't think of puppets for kids, it's just sort of like I don't like it either. Apollo's Pad. I left just as Apollo's Pad was happening, or that was just my timing of like, it's not the kind of projects I want to make.
And did that get picked up into a full series, or was it just?
No, never happened. Never turned into anything.
Okay. So the one thing about a lot of stuff in your career with the puppetry is, now with the recent rise of Nanalan and a lot of the episodes on YouTube, still Nickelodeon hasn't come and put Mr. Meaty on any place. And
I know.
Where do you think I haven't personally looked, but I don't know if Big and Small is out there. I know Rasputin's out there on disc, and I'm sure it's other places as well, streaming, Amazon.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Why hasn't your work been, especially in the streaming age?
I agree. Why don't they just make a little sale to one of the streamers and sell it? I just don't think, probably the people who are selling streaming material are not aware of Mr. Meaty. You know, I just think it's maybe as simple as that. Like, because it happened 20 years ago, and the people who are working there now didn't grow up watching it and don't aware. And it would take some sort of champion, some Mr. Meaty fan who started working there. Probably it'd be not easy. You know what I mean? Like, hey, why don't you buy this, Adult Swim? I don't know, whatever. And then they're like, no, we got a full program. It takes a lot to get something through the finish line, I guess. I don't know why that is.
Something that popped into my head the other day that I wanted to ask you today was, and this is a business related question, do you think because Nickelodeon was investing advertising dollars into the show once upon a time, do you think because they had to cancel it, there was still a return of investment? So do you think that they might feel somewhere in the deep dark bowels of Nickelodeon in Los Angeles that we're not going to put any more effort into this because we've already lost money, if they have? Is that how these people think?
Maybe it does. Maybe. I mean, these are all guesses. All we can do is theorize. Yeah, maybe it had a really bad taste for everybody because it had such a public reaction. Maybe that could be true. But I think they should capitalize on that. You know?
It's the shock value.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the common thing of voice of mouth. Word of mouth is the biggest promotion. So even if somebody says it's bad, everybody wants to go see it anyway.
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
people are talking about it. That's all you need. All press, bad press is good press. Yeah, I know. Maybe it happened before people kind of really realized that the value of that. But I don't know. I'd be curious too. If I ever kind of get in myself in the halls of Viacom, I'll ask.
So what has your conversations with these business individuals happened since then? I mean, do they when you
Done? I've never talked to them since.
okay.
Yeah, I just haven't really. I've talked to a couple executives, and they're just on new jobs, so there's not really much to talk about. Maybe.
Interesting.
One guy works for DreamWorks. The other guy is, developing thing. He has a Netflix job. You know what I mean? People just kind of like move around in LA to their various things. I think it's just probably just lost in the shuffle. There's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of shows, and it's funny how, but maybe it'll have a day. Let's say in 3 years, for some reason, people are like, it's time. May Mr. Meaty have its second wind.
What would you say was the proudest aspect of it all? I mean, are there any regrets for everything? For
everything.
Mr. Meaty, big and small?
Wow, I think I wish I trusted myself more the whole way along. I think I had a really good instinct that I didn't let I didn't take control as much as I could have, and sort of like I think I could have just trusted myself more, and I shouldn't have been. I let the forces of, the more successful you get, the more people will want to take you down. The more money you make, or people that love you, or whatever it is, it's always got this balance. And so I definitely had lots of success, and then I had the critics that come with that success. And I wish I had thicker skin for those critics, because I think I would have probably done more. I mean, I got plenty to do now, and I'm kind of like, as a mature person, kind of like finding that, I'm not going to stop. There's nothing going to stop me. I'm going to do what I want, all the creative things I want to do in my life. And that strength is coming to me now. But if I could have had that strength back then, I would have loved it, because that's what you need. You need to just kind of like, be a good person, but be very forthright, and don't let all the forces derail your confidence.
And using that energy now, you're in your 50s, correct?
Yeah.
What's funny, I think you share the same birth date day as my mom.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's very interesting that it works out like that.
So you're Pisces?
Maybe. I'm a Libra myself.
Nice.
But the that energy of persistence, what are you using that in today? You mentioned to me you have a new project you're working on now.
Yeah, I'm about to finish. I've written 2 features before, and they just weren't good enough. It's so hard to write a good film. Now I have worked with a writer who's very talented, and we together have made a really good film. And I'm very excited to put that out there. And I'm also developing, I just love the ability as a creator to develop something with AI. You can really, I finally have someone to bounce off of with my ideas, because my problem is I just get too lost in the idea, and it's hard to be objective. So it's nice to have a free collaborator that I don't have to pay or share ownership with, or just, so that's been really nice. So now I am pretty keen. I have a horror movie that I'm writing, and a kind of like a fantasy labyrinth type film.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah.
And what stage is it? Strictly still in the writing stage now?
Yeah,
Or
I've just finished I'm just about to finish the final draft of, we're on draft 5, and I'm about to give it one more flourish, and then I will finish that fantasy film, and I'm going to go up to Fantasia in Montreal and start meeting people and start learning the film business. And I might go to some influencers and ask them if they want to fund a film that they can star in. I'm going to find different kinds of avenues to try and make it happen.
how would you say, obviously this is a film this time around and not a series, what would you say is the biggest maturity difference between this upcoming project? Because you are going to make it.
Yeah.
What's the maturity difference? What do you really look
Well,
for?
I am a good writer now. Like after all this, after all the experience in my life, and a story is just a beast. It's almost like you're never done writing, and even master writers don't always turn out great stuff. But the kinds of things that you kind of, writing was my hardest one gift. I was a gifted puppeteer. I was a gifted puppet maker, and I'm good at ideas, but the skill of writing, that was a hard one to really grasp. But I feel like I kind of am finally there, where I'm like, okay, this needs a twist. This character needs this. We've lost focus of the narrator, or we could tie these things together, and that's not on theme. It's just sort of like all these subtle things that it's hard to kind of like really put your finger on, because it's such art writing's so loose and subjective. But now I'm a great writer, and I feel like I've put out a couple masterpieces. I do believe that story is one of the most valuable things. Like, we're made of story, and so if you're able to write a good story, that's the greatest power.
I agree, and I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people. I'm 23, and especially people around my age, they're like, you gotta have the best camera, you gotta have the best director. It's like you have to have a great story first.
Yep.
And that's all that matters. And I feel like I'm glad you actually said that, because that's exactly where I am,
Yep.
And
good stuff.
I hope
you're doing so well. You're only 23, huh? How many films have you made?
We've done, I think, maybe 5 or 6 now.
That's amazing.
Thank you, man. And just going by what you said, it's just like, as long as you have the serendipity of it, as long as you have like the right pieces at the right time, and it's natural, it's not forced. Yep. And if the story conveys the message you're trying to, convey, I think you can just film with your phone or a red camera, whatever. I'm just agreeing with what you're saying, because I'm glad you said
you're
that.
You're totally right about that. I totally agree. It's like, get the thing started. I mean, that's that secret ingredient. It's like people have all these things that block them. That's what they're discovering more and more. Is like, success is removing resistance. It's not your own internal resistance.
Success is say that again. I want to hear that again.
Success is removing the resistance that you have to your own success. That's another way to put it. Okay. Like, just kind of like, I'm not good enough, getting beyond that. I don't want to fail, and I don't want to be made fun of. I don't want to do something I'm not good at. All those things that stop you from doing the thing you want to do.
I do want to touch on Rasputin briefly as well, because I enjoyed that.
Thanks.
That was totally different style of puppetry from anything that has been released. And I do want to...
Yeah, there they are. They're right up there.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. I see young Josh. I see the pizza.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's nice. The real quick, I always wanted to commend you on the shadow puppetry. I think it was a leopard. It was something like that. It was a shadow puppetry project a long time ago.
Oh yeah, those were for an art thing. Those leopards, those golden leopards.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, they were pretty cool. They walked. They were kind of like, people could walk with them, and there's a little handle in their shoulders, and all their legs would go click, 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 click.
That's
That's cool. I love the engineering of puppets. I do love making puppets. Soft engineering.
how would you, so when you did an interview touching base on Rasputin, the project, and the real life figure, you spoke on, you showed a bunch of books you had in it, and you showed talking about these infamous figures. You mentioned the late Rob Ford in there. I don't know if you remember, but
Did I? Where?
it was I don't want to say it was the CBC, but it was an interview you did. They came to the island, and they
that was Rob Ford time or something. I don't remember what I had said.
You sat down and we're talking about Rasputin was this figure. How did you come to want to create that project, and how did you come up with that style to do the puppets in?
Oh, well, Rasputin was kind of interesting to me, as much as that time in history was very fascinating. That's like 1919. Russia was not the last, but they had this giant kingdom, and it was a feudalist, a family. The Romanovs had been ruling for 300 years, and that came to an end right then and there. And Rasputin was kind of a big part of it. But what I find fascinating is how people are so fascinated by him. He's kind of like loved, and he was loved and hated. And it's kind of like I think it's a kind of fascinating character that obviously is still out there. These, very divisive characters like Trump, you know what I mean? They kind of capture the public imagination because they kind of like play on two sides, dark, sexual, deviant, and thinking they're a superhero and a healer of the world, and all those kind of like complicated things kind of has made him this enigmatic character that nobody really knows anybody from that time. The richest guy in the world, Felix Yusupov, he was the richest Russian. I think he was more richer than the Tsar. He was the murderer of Rasputin, trying to basically erase that guy's history. And Rasputin's the only one anybody remembers because he was so fascinating.
When you took that inspiration, how did you come up with the I know this history, but how am I going to translate this to puppets?
I know it was kind of tough, actually, because I ended up just telling the story in a really kind of like tightened world. I did go to a playwright's getaway, a puppet playwright getaway, so that helped me with the story in the beginning. I think the story was, he felt that he was, I forget what
you used the word tyrant, Jamie, in your interview. So maybe that might.
I don't think he was. My story wasn't him the tyrant. My story was him the kind of like, just kind of taking advantage of opportunity. Yeah, which I actually think he probably was. He was like a serf, and mystics were very popular then. Mysticism, the early 1900s, people really got into that kind of like. So he was the right kind of healer in that day, that the royal family would hire this mystic, and I think he was just taking advantage of an opportunity, and I think he was killed as a scapegoat. I think that the use of a scapegoat culturally, where you kind of like, Russia was hating the royal family, and the rest of the world was free from this autocratic rule, but the Russian public was getting very angry. So in order to keep keep everything as the way it was, they were like, we're going to kill Rasputin. We'll get rid of the evil. But I don't think he was the evil, who knows what the evil was, but it was, he was just a figurehead that they thought they could kind of like take away the public's hate with him.
What is interesting about that time period is it was just all word of mouth and what you heard or what you saw.
Yeah, so it's true.
That definitely adds to the maybe the mysticism. Yeah, that might be the word I'm trying to but in the enigmatic atmosphere of it too, you know.
Yeah.
So you kind of always had to go off of what you heard. And his appearance, you know, he had the beard, he had the eye, like the eyes and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
He definitely had a presence.
Yeah, he had a presence, so everybody loved to talk about him. I actually read a pretty interesting book written by the Jews at the time, and they were not having an easy time in Russia in the 1920s. There was pogroms and all that kind of thing, but they loved him because he was kind of a compassionate pacifist. But they were getting involved in the war, and you know, Russia didn't. They felt they didn't need to have a pacifist kind of trying to convince the Tsar not to be violent and aggressive.
So something that you briefly touched on when you were saying that was, this is just like a personal question in life. I'm here in Pittsburgh in the United States, and you're up there in Toronto, Canada.
Yep.
Our president down here is Donald Trump as recording this. What is the atmosphere? I understand, you know, Canada has their own like Donald Trump he doesn't control Canada. But when political stuff down here arises or word of mouth, how does that affect another country?
Yeah. So I mean, we're in the same all anybody thinks or talks about is Donald Trump. Maybe a little less today than 2 weeks ago. But he has basically the narcissist dream. The whole world can't stop thinking about you, both bad and good. That's just everything that a narcissist would love. It's really funny. But he's like, I think people who are living in Yemen are thinking about Trump. You know what I mean? It's like people who are in New Zealand can't stop thinking about him because he just is constantly getting himself in the press. So yes, I think he supersedes our own prime minister as people's fascination and how much they talk about him.
Are you guys going to become our 51st state?
Oh, I don't know. I hope not.
I don't know.
No, that's scary.
If you think about it, you know how many maps you're going to have to rebuy again? Like all the schools are going to have to, the globes are going to have to change. The physical ones, you know. I think it's been really nice, and I think we should continue having Canada as its own country. I think you know, amalgamating is not, you know, we want culture, we want things to be different. I think that's what makes the world beautiful, not have everything be absorbed and be the same. I think Canada's, especially Vancouver, it's a very beautiful place to
it is.
You know.
Yeah, Vancouver's outrageous. Yeah, we have tons of beauty and natural wonder, and let's not take over other countries. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's a good way to go. It's like Canada's been its own thing this whole time. Yeah, and you guys, peaceful place. Yeah, undefended border for all these years. Let's keep this wonderful union alive. I want to show you something, and I want to shout out Echo. Echo did this. Echo did all this. Talented Echo. Okay. So I have to say, a lot's been going on for me moving and everything. So we've had to pause the puppets. But this is the current. Wow! All right. Now we have to repaint this chick, but this is. I like her blue hair. Shout out that was Echo. Beautiful, man. Nice looking puppet. That's well done. And it feels like gourd, you know. And, good job. You got the whole aesthetic too. That's funny that Mr. Meaty potato head aesthetic. I don't know how Echo did it. I gotta be honest with you. I don't know how she did it, but and she went to a very competitive art school, and I have a full box of all the molds and stuff here. We have to finish, but cool. I said, hey, look, I don't know how to do this. I'm not good with my hands. Please help me. And I said, do you remember Mr. Meaty? And she goes, I already know where this is going. So she moved back to Maryland now. She graduated. Okay. And she's working with us on our new films and stuff. And
I want to shout her out because not only her, but that whole school is full of talented people like you, man. And
What school is that?
it's called the Douglas Education Center in
Cool. It's art school, yeah.
Monessen, PA, and
Cool.
she went to the Tom Savini program down there.
Cool.
So he has his own art school and a part of that, place down there. And
Nice.
so a lot of this stuff I always just want to learn and just be around people that like don't gatekeep. And that's something that you never did to me. Was as many questions that I've asked you over the years and as many times as I've texted you and stuff, and as meticulous as it could have been, you always try to help.
I try, yeah. With the time I have, it's crazy how life gets so busy now, even more than 5 years ago, and even more than 5 years ago before that. It's wild.
And I always, me and you are good buddies, and you're sensei to me. I tell everybody that.
Oh, thanks. You're gonna kick ass. You're gonna do really well, Rocco. I do believe that.
Is there any sort of last big message you want to say about not giving up and how to persevere and that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like I hit that note. Like, yeah, keep on going and and find your voice. There's something unique, I think, that everybody has to say, and you'd be better to find your unique voice than, you can imitate people when you get started and, look for your inspirations, but you should very quickly move to your own voice, because that's what everybody's going to be interested in. And I do believe in this time of AI, authenticity is really valuable.
Is there anything on AI that you want to speak on a little bit more?
Well, I just have no idea what's going to happen in the future, as everybody. So I can't guess, which is quite scary. It's really like, I feel like it's going to make a huge shift to everything. Maybe not as big as we're imagining, but I can't imagine. It's already seeming to make a huge shift. I don't know what's going to happen with filmmaking and entertainment. I don't know. But I do know that for the moment, and including all backlash and everything, it's just sort of like, it seems like authenticity is going to have the value, the share value of authenticity went up.
Okay.
With AI.
I agree with you, man. It's a lot of my feed is because they're really pushing it. The algorithm pushes you to see artificial intelligence generated imagery now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of getting annoying and scary at the same time.
I know. It's interesting. I've been very fascinated. I love it. I love the horror, actually. I think AI does really cool horror. It's very strange now that there's going to be all this fake news that's completely sound and everything. I have no idea what that's going to do to society. But I do think there's a sort of empty feeling with it. Like, I've almost become bored at looking at unbelievable AI images already. It's like they make these cool model pictures that, someone would spend a whole day doing the makeup and props for this weird model picture. And now they can pump out 15 crazy model pictures that are fascinating, that would have been just mind-blowing if they came out, in a magazine 10 years ago. But it very quickly became just kind of like, if your brain knows, oh, they just did this with AI, there's a lack of value to it. There's a lack of effort value.
Do you anticipate AI, because in 2021, 22 maybe, it was the Bored Ape, it was the NFTs, and no one talks about that anymore, really. Even though there is still an investment and different opinions on that. But do you think AI will turn into that, where no one's going to talk about that 2-3 years from now?
No, oh God, no. I think it's going to get fully integrated into every single part of our lives.
Okay.
And I think we're going to have AI robots in 5 years. The average person will have an AI robot doing something, their dishes. I don't know. I think it's going to fundamentally change the workspace. I don't know if we're going to all turn back into Russia with the czars and the serfs. I don't know. Like, I do. It's a very frightening time. It's really I don't know what's going to happen. I'm pretty scared. It's outsourcing human intelligence. It's sort of so sad and disappointing. It's like people have to train their whole life to be a great poet or lawyer or philosopher, and this thing just goes beep.
And I knew it's right
it
there.
out. It just does all that intellectual work that can take a lifetime to get good enough to be able to emulate, and it's wild. It's I don't know what's gonna happen, man.
On a more positive, happy, sunshine ending note, what is one puppet that you are number one most proud of making, and what is a puppet that you wish you could have made better?
Oh,
and it could be from any project, anything you've ever done.
I don't know if I could ever say that I would want to have made a puppet better. I'll remake them sometimes to move better. Like I made this beaver, and
Duck for mayor.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. I made him many years ago, and then I've changed his eyes. I made better eyes on him, but
Okay.
his lips are still made out of just not the most flexible material. So, yeah, I think I could probably just make him a little bit better. But puppets, their lack of quality is part of their quality. You know what I mean? Like, just like a flappy mouth puppet is great because it's flappy mouth. But that is my. I don't really think I have any that I don't like. But I'm pretty soon going to launch something called the Blah Show. I'll brush it by your screen because maybe by the time you put this out, it'll come out. And I'll just float them by the screen so that nobody's. There. That's the best puppet I've ever made.
There we go.
And he's going to be my new puppet out there to save the world. He's kind of like like I'm a chill guy, or feels. Who's the dog with the burning house?
Everything's gonna be fine. I know what you're talking
Everything's
about.
gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Yeah, he's kind of like those that kind of you're just kind of easygoing despite the world kind of falling apart, which I think is a good energy for today. So that is my new thing that I'm coming out with maybe by the time you release this interview.
Okay. The one more thing that I actually just thought of. Growing up, when I was doing my own research on you, you had, I believe, a Flickr page. I don't know if anybody talks about Flickr anymore.
Really? I don't remember. What is Flickr? I don't even remember what it is.
Flickr was basically online Instagram, where it was just pictures.
Oh yeah. And I started one?
I think it was you, but you had the community potato puppets.
Oh yeah.
and I would like for you to, as a puppeteer and as a person of the community, because you're very into the community where you are, could you kind of like touch about how that project came to be and if it's going to come back? Because you see a lot of little kids enjoying themselves with those.
Yeah, that's my best workshop ever. It's real Mr. Potato Head, basically. I was in Prince Edward Island because I have a lot of friends that live in Prince Edward Island. It's one of our provinces in Canada, and they grow potatoes there. That's their national crop. So I was like, I'm going to come up with a puppet to make out of a potato. So basically, it's just a potato chopped in half with some chopsticks, so you can make it talk like the Canadians. That kind of like. Rah, 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 rah. So but then you just take pins and you pin beads and fun fur onto it. So it's this kind of very cheap workshop I've done many times, and because everybody has a good time. You can make a puppet in 3 minutes, basically.
It was the simplicity because kids would understand simplicity better.
Exactly. It was. I needed to do I needed to do a workshop everybody could do. So I did it for like little kids, adults. So yeah, potato puppet will never stop. I'll never stop. Anybody can else do I give that recipe away to, I think it's like a perfect workshop that, all you have to do is buy a bag of potatoes, some pins, and some beads.
Is there any, could you please promote your socials, everything that you have?
Yeah. Well, you can check me out. I am Puppet Island on Instagram. I have a Puppet Island YouTube, and pretty soon you're going to see the Blah Show everywhere. So that'll be my new project. And then yeah, that's all my stuff.
And you also have puppetisland.com where people could find a couple reels of your works on there.
Oh yeah, Puppet Island. Yeah, exactly. Puppetisland.com is where my, or is it .ca? Puppetisland.ca, I think.
CA.
That's where my that's my kind of business. I do make puppets sometimes for television commercials, and yeah, puppetisland.ca. I do make them for television commercials and various stuff like that. So that's kind of my commercial website for doing that.
And you have a Twitter?
Oh yeah, I got a Twitter
and TikTok.
Shannon on Twitter.
You Puppet Island
TikTok too. Yes, I do. Thank you.
I have
You're better at promoting it than I am.
I've
got too many of these things, and now I'm gonna just kind of like zero in and focus on them. Social media is really the greatest tool, and I'm lucky to find my way to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're gonna sign off for the video, and then now we'll talk for a second, and then okay.
Thanks so much, Rocco.
I thank you for everything, man. And
yeah, great interview. You're good at that. You should do
great
more
conversation with.
Yeah.